Culture in the 1930s was flourishing despite the Great Depression. Almost every American family had a radio. Even in rural areas, radios were hooked up to car batteries. Poor urban neighborhoods got together as a community and listened to the radio. Popular radio shows include Amos and Andy, Superman, Dick Tracy, The Lone Ranger, Orson Welles' Halloween Special, and many other soap operas were also very popular. A few of the events that were broadcast on the radio include the World Series, the Academy Awards, political conventions, and Hindenburg. Although movie attendance dropped significantly in the beginning of the Great Depression, it rebounded again in the later 1930s. Some of the most popular movies of the time include Our Daily Bread, John Ford's Grapes of Wrath, Little Caesar, The Public's Enemy, Mr. Deed Goes to Town, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, Snow White, and The Wizard of Oz. Magazine and books written in the 1930s often dealt with the increasing radicalism of the time. Life magazine had its first publication in the 1930s, along with popular authors like Nathaniel West, Jack Convoy, James T. Farrell, Dale Carnegie, and John Steinbeck. Americans looked to radio and movies as an escape from the bad times. Movies and radio distracted them from the hardships they were facing. They could stay in the movie palace all day. Also, soap operas offered an escape for people wanting to forget about their worries during the Great Depression. John Steinbeck wrote personalized stories of victims of the Great Depression. These evoked sympathy for the characters and anger at the social injustice. Magazines became popular because they provided photos with commentary critiquing American lifestyle. Dorothea Lange is well known for her photography during the Great Depression that captured the genuine anguish and despair of the homeless people and other people affected by the Great Depression. Gambling also became popular because of people's low income. Although things were hard for the whites during the Great Depression, the blacks had it even worse. In the South, Jim Crow laws dominated, creating discrimination and segregation against every black. However, in the North, African American culture was flourishing. Harlem, New York became an African American neighborhood in the early 1900s during the Great Migration, in which many sought a better standard of living and relief from the institutionalized racism in the South. The Harlem Renaissance was an overt racial pride in the developing idea of the new Negro, who through intellect and production of literature, art, and music could challenge the pervading racism and promote progressive politics. African Americans were able to create many new forms of culture in the Harlem Renaissance. A new way of playing the piano called the Harlem Stride style was created during the Renaissance. Jazz musicians like Fats Waller, Duke Ellington, Jelly Roll Morton, and Willie the Lion Smith are considered to have laid the foundation for future musicians of their genre. Visual artists of the time included Charles Alston, Henry Banner, Leslie Bowling, Aaron Douglas, Jacob Lawrence, and Archibald Motley. Many Americans would express their feelings about the Great Depression through music. The song "Brother, Can You Spare a Dime" perfectly exhibits how the inequalities of the 1930s were reflected in the culture.
Once I built a railroad, made it run, made it race against time. Once I built a railroad, now it's done. Brother, can you spare a dime?